this doesn't happen every year. We always get too hyped up. And it's funny, I was watching some older Everything Apple Pro videos. I was trying to find some cool renders, and it was just funny, like all the stuff that we always thought was going to be true, like 2 years ago that didn't, turn out to be true. Satellite connectivity. Apple was going to sell a 4G only model of, was it the iPhone 12, or just rumors. And this happens every single year. We get some really crazy rumors in the beginning, and then the closer and closer we get, the more real the phone becomes and the less exciting it is. But it just, this is the game we play following Apple rumors. It is what it is. And I guess Speaking of that, more bad news as we get closer to things, and more conflicting news. So we talked MacBook Air last week, how it probably wouldn't have the M2 processor and no mini LED display. So a couple of things here. According to Ming-Chi Kuo, Apple will not release any new products this year with mini LED, that it's just too expensive, supply chain issues, whatever it is, no mini LED products. So that confirms no mini LED on the 11-inch iPad Pro, RIP, and also no mini LED on the MacBook Air, which would have been a really nice thing to have a really nice high-quality display. Not going to happen. But conflicting news here, we have Ming-Chi Kuo who says M1 MacBook Air. Mark Gurman says M2 MacBook Air. So I don't know what happened with the processor. I don't know if there's just, again, we talk about supply chain issues and logistics. Maybe the M2 just wasn't ready, so they're reshuffling things around. But as of now, there is a new MacBook Air coming, but we just don't know what the specifics are going to be. And it looks like the iPhone 14. It's a little pared down from what we originally thought it would be. Still going to have a nice design, but it will probably not have the nice higher end mini LED display. And then this also, I guess, puts in jeopardy the iMac Pro, which we can also talk about because I've seen so many hot takes on this. People are like, Apple's not going to do it.
I know.
They said they are going to do it. Ming-Chi Kuo says they will do it. Mark Gurman still says they are going to do it. So there is still a lot of hope for this thing, but it probably won't come till 2023. So,
right. Well, and then the other thing,
confusing.
I didn't read I only read the headline of that, no mini LED coming in 2022. Did that imply that there's not going to be an update to the XDR display, which we were expecting?
Great question. I think so. Well,
because I saw some people were expecting that the studio display would also have a version that was mini LED, or maybe the iMac Pro would have a mini LED.
That's a great question because I think Ross Young, the display analyst, he said that Apple might introduce a Pro version of the studio display with mini LED, but maybe not. It's so hard. And again, I mentioned this earlier, I've never seen so many conflicting rumors from like good sources. Usually the sources are on the same page in varying degrees, but this time it's like people are like all off on their timeline. So
I know.
It seems like it's in the works rather, but it could be this year, or if Ming-Chi Kuo's right, it could be next year. And I guess I should say that Ming-Chi Kuo is not always right. Ross Young has been 100% correct as of now, but he doesn't have the track record that Kuo has. So it's always like, who do you believe? It's tough. It's nice when everybody gets on the same page, even though when that happens, it doesn't even always mean anything. But things are just so confusing this year. And I've seen so many hot takes on iMac Pro's dead and it's not dead. And
well, let's get into that. What's the hot takes? What are the hot takes on this iMac Pro? Because, we kind of mentioned it last week, whether or not we want an iMac Pro anymore, or whether or not we'll see it now that the Mac Studio exists and presumably will have the exact same power, if not better. Or I guess the iMac Pro could have better power, but I'd presume if they do make an iMac Pro, it'll be exactly the same performance as the Mac Studio. So now that exists and there's a display, you kind of get the same package. But do they need to make an iMac Pro? I agree. There's been a lot of hot takes on this.
Do they need to? No. Are they going to? I think they will. I think that, like I said, not because I think that Apple needs to enter that market, but there has been too much info, too many leaks from too many different sources that, and again, have reaffirmed that Apple is working on this. And if Mark Gurman and both him and Ming-Chi Kuo say it's going to happen, I tend to believe it is going to happen, though it might not happen this year. But I think that there is room for a nice 27-inch mini LED display, ProMotion, all-in-one desktop. That yes, the Mac Studio is nice, but there's a nice all-in-one package Apple could sort of sell to people at maybe around the same price. Maybe you're looking at $3,000 or something in that ballpark, that has the M1 Pro or M1 Max. Oh yeah, I'm so confused on the chips now. M1 Max or M1 Ultra, and then you'd have a nice sort of all-in-one solution. So Is it the same customer, same customer as the Mac Studio? Maybe you're sort of getting in that same territory, but maybe there's enough that Apple thinks that there's a way to separate that. And it would sort of make sense in the Apple line we always talk about, because then you'd have MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, iMac, iMac Pro, Mac Mini, Mac Studio, Mac Pro. So you sort of are putting an option at every single price point and for every single level that I think it'd be nice for Apple to round it out. Is it going to be probably a big seller? Probably not, but I think it does make sense, and we probably will see it, is my guess.
Yeah, I'm conflicted too. I guess my question now is, I think a 27-inch iMac of some sort will exist, but will it just be a 27-inch iMac? And, it has the M1 option, or I guess maybe M2 at that point, depending on who you want to believe. And then maybe it only goes up to like an M1 Max at the most. And if you want the Ultra, you're going to have to get the Studio. You're going to have to get the Mac Pro. Is that possible? But then on the other hand, we're still expecting at some point a Mac Mini to come, which could be the home computer, but then you don't get the display. So yeah, that's kind of confusing. I'm kind of betting that it's not going to be an iMac Pro. It's going to be a iMac 27-inch, just because, the rumors that we've heard going back and forth, since before the Mac Studio was announced, was always, is this going to look different? Is it going to have a different design? And then some people say yes, and then other people say no, it's going to look exactly the same as the 27-inch or the 24-inch iMac we have now, but it's going to be a 27-inch model, which that would lead me to believe it's just a bigger version. Plus, we've always had a smaller and a bigger version. We had the 21.5-inch and we had the 27-inch. And that's that's just how the iMac has always been. They've had two sizes, I guess, not always, but since the second generation with that floaty lamp kind of base one that they had, they've always had two sizes. So, I mean, would be different not to have two sizes.
Do you think we see the naming scheme change? Because we were set on regular Pro. Do you think they call it iMac Studio? I love the Mac Studio. The name doesn't make any sense. So yeah. I don't know if it's in a class of its own, or do we see Apple sort of transition away? I don't think we see MacBook Studio, but maybe for their desktops, they have the Mac Pro, and then their other Pro-focused Macs are Mac Studio, iMac Studio. This is just a random guess. I have no idea, but I am curious to see. I had never heard that. See if they do change the name a little bit just to sort of match what they're doing now.
That would be interesting, and that would definitely be a way to do it. Like that would, tell the customer like this is basically an all-in-one version of the Mac Studio for those people that would want it. And I guess the initial reaction to that would be, well, why would they do that when they have the Mac Studio? That's just going to cannibalize the sales. But I guess on one hand, if they're buying either one, Apple's still, getting the profit from that, so that you can look at it that way. But also, if we look at the iPad Air, obviously they don't really care about cannibalizing sales, because the iPad Pro, I guess depending on which way you look at it, either the iPad Pro is not going to get nearly as many people to buy it, or the iPad Air is going to get way more people to buy it. And because those products are so close that's almost a similar situation to the, this iMac Studio and Mac Studio. Like they're basically the same product in a lot of ways. Apple doesn't seem to have a problem with that kind of cannibalization, especially when it's in their own product line. There's someone still buying a Mac at that point. So what's the big deal there? Hey, you made it to the end of this Apple Circle podcast clip, but there is a full episode. So if you want to listen to that, click the video over here. You can watch the entire thing. Or if you're someone who just wants to listen in your headphones, we have the audio version, of course. Links for that, where you can subscribe and listen in your favorite audio podcast player, is down below. And last but not least, the Apple Circle channel, where we have mini videos covering everything Apple, is also linked down below. So be sure to check that out and get subscribed.